It's time to learn about Android lifecycle methods. It's about birth and rebirth. So first and foremost, in order to understand the Android lifecycle, first we have to understand the difference between a mobile operating system, it can be Android or iOS, and a Mac or PC operating system. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is a mobile operating system has a lot of limitations in comparison with a Mac or PC operating system. So first, let's learn about those limitations. One of those limitations is that the mobile phone runs on battery power mostly. So what does this mean? This means that when the user uses my application or any kinds of application, the mobile phone might simply turn off. In other words, there is no guarantee that the user might be able to use my application for a long period of time. Another limitation that a mobile phone faces is that a mobile phone has less memory than a PC or a Mac operating system. So we have to be careful about the memory that our application uses. A mobile phone has less processing power than a Mac or PC. So what all these limitations mean? These limitations here mean that the system or the mobile operating system has to be careful about allocating system resources. Okay, this is very important. So I'm just gonna type in here SR, that stands for system resources. So the mobile phone has to be really careful about allocating the system resources, otherwise it's gonna have a lot of problems. So let's see how the Android or the iOS operating systems allocate the system resources. So when the user runs an application, the application will be in the foreground. This means that this is the application that the user is currently interacting with. So what about the other applications that are in the background, right? So there are some applications that might be in the background. What happens to them? In those cases, there might be a time that the operating system needs a little bit of resources for the current application running in the foreground, that it is going to kill the other applications in the background so that it can reclaim the resources from those applications that are being killed and then allocate the resources to the current application that is running in the foreground. Okay, so when the application goes into the background, it is actually in a very dangerous state and it can get killed by the operating system at any time. In other words, the operating system only cares about the application that is currently running in the foreground. And this is the application that the user is currently interacting with. So when the application goes into the background, the operating system doesn't care about them at all. And it's gonna kill them if it needs resources for the current application that is running in the foreground. So now you should know there is a life cycle to an Android app, which means there is a birth, death, and rebirth here. So here it is what happens when the user starts running our application. So first the user is going to tap on the app icon and it's gonna start the application. So now the app is ready and it is in the foreground. So now the user starts interacting with our application a little bit, and now the user wants to open another application. Okay, so now our application goes into the background. Another application is opened here, right? So now the user starts interacting with another application. So now the operating system understands that the application that is currently running, or this another application that is opened and it is running in the foreground, needs a little bit of resources. So what the operating system is going to do? The operating system is going to kill our application in the background. So now the resources are reclaimed and now the resources can be allocated to the other application that is currently running in the foreground. Okay, so this is the application that is running in the foreground and it's going to use the resources that are freed up. Okay, so this is how the Android lifecycle works. So now you should know that the operating system will notify us at each point of the Android lifecycle. So what does that mean? This means that the operating system will not simply kill our application without first letting us know about it. So when the application burns, it's gonna let our application know. When the application goes into the background, it's gonna let our application know. When the application is going to be destroyed completely or it is going to be killed, it's gonna let our application know. So we can do something at each point of this life cycle. For example, if I know that my application is going to be dead soon, then I'm gonna save the essential data. I'm gonna save the user's profile image or the user's username, password, or any data worth saving. I can do something about those data. So this is how the lifecycle works. And now let's learn about the Android Lifecycle methods. So now go ahead and open your Quiz app project and then open the main activity class. So here we have this onCreate method. So the onCreate method is the first method that is being called when the application is being born or when the user taps on the application icon inside the user's phone in order to launch the application. So this is the first lifecycle method that is called. So I'm gonna create a toast message and I'm gonna say that, okay, when this method is called, when this message is sent from the Android operating system to my Android application, I'm just gonna show a toast message and say that the onCreate method is called. Okay, so this is the message that is sent by the operating system to my Android app. So if I go ahead and run the application, you will see when I run the app, it's gonna show this message to the user. So let's wait until the application launches. So it is not showing me the toast message because I forgot to call the show method on my toast object. So this is very important that you call the show method. Otherwise, it won't show the toast message on the screen. So let's run the application again. Now it's gonna show this toast message. onCreate method is called. So the onCreate method is the best place to set all the things up because now is the time that the application is being loaded into the phone's memory. So now we can, for example, initialize my member variables. I can set the on-click listener on my buttons. I can initialize all of the things that are necessary so the application starts and the user can start interacting with the application. So for example, here in this onCreate method, I get the first question and display the first question on the screen. So when the onCreate method is called, it's gonna show the first message or the first question to the user. So now let's see what is the next message that is being sent from the operating system after the onCreate message is sent. So after the onCreate method, the onStart method is called. So here inside this class, make sure that you are inside the curly braces of this main activity class. I'm gonna just create a comment and say lifecycle methods. Okay, so here I'm just gonna override the onStart. So this is the method that is being called, or this is the message that is being sent from the operating system to our Android application. Here after super.onStart, I'm gonna create a toast message. So I'm just gonna copy this toast message that we have inside the onCreate method here, and I'm gonna paste it here, and I'm gonna say that the onStart method is called this time. So the onStart method is called because now the operating system wants to let our application know that the application is now visible on the screen. So let's go ahead and run the application and see whether this method or this message is sent or not. So here it says onCreate method is called, onStart method is called. So the onStart method is called after the onCreate method. So let's see what is the next message after the onStart message. So the next message that is being sent from the operating system to our Android application is called the onResume message, onResume method. So this message is called because now the operating system wants to let our application know that the application is now in the foreground and now the user can interact with the application. So now the application is in the running state. So here I'm just gonna copy this toast message and paste it here. And instead I'm gonna say on resume method is called. Let's go ahead and run the program and see what happens. Okay, on create method, on start method, on resume method. So now the application is ready to work. So now it's time to see what message is sent to the Android application from the operating system when the application is no longer in the foreground, or when the application cannot be interacted with. It might be still visible or partially visible, but the user cannot do anything with the application. For example, the user might be seeing multiple applications on the device, but those applications cannot be interacted with. They might be visible, but they cannot be interacted with. So for example, if I tap on this recent tabs icon, now the application is still visible, right? But I cannot interact with the elements of my application. So let's see what is the message that is sent from the operating system to my Android app when this application goes into this state. So the message that is sent from the operating system is called on pause. So this is the place that we should save the essential data, the critical and crucial data of the user or the application. So the on pause method is called when the application is somehow visible, but it cannot be interacted with. So I'm just gonna copy and paste this toast message here, and I'm gonna change this value to on pause. Let's run the program and see what happens. So on create method is called, on start method is called, on resume method is called. Now let's see the recent tabs. So I'm just gonna tap on this icon. Now the on pause method is called. So now if I go back to the application, the on start and the on resume method is called, okay? So the on create method will not be called if the application goes back from the on pause method. So here, if I tap on this recent apps again, you can see that the on pause method is called. But now if I choose my application again, here, it's not gonna call the on create method. It's just gonna call the on start and the on resume method in order to let the application know that the application is now visible and now it can be interacted with. It is now in the running state. So in other words, when the application goes back from the on pause method, it's not gonna give birth to the application because the application is not dead yet, okay? So now let's learn about the next lifecycle stage. So now the user wants the application to go in the background, or the user wants to open another application, and the application will not be visible anymore, okay? Remember, in the on pause method, the application is still visible, but the user cannot interact with the application. But in the on stop method, the application is not visible at all. Okay, so what do I mean by that? For example, if I tap on the home button, now the application is not visible. So here, it's gonna call the on pause method, but there is also another method that it's gonna call, and that's called the on stop method. So the on stop method is called when the application is not visible at all. So I'm just gonna copy this toast message and paste it here, and I'm gonna say on stop method is called. So let's run the program and see what happens. So because the application is not visible anymore, this is the best place to stopping the UI updates. So for example, if you have a video player application, if the application goes in the background, you do not want to still continue playing that video because it is weird. So now the application is running. Now I'm gonna tap on the home button. First, it's gonna call the on pause method, and then it's gonna call the on stop method, okay? So this is the place that you can see the application is not visible at all. So at this stage, remember, you should stop all UI updates. For example, if an MP3 player, a song is playing, you might want to stop the song when the application goes in the background. Or you might want to stop the camera, the animations, or anything that is actually being updated on the user interface. Because now the application is not visible anymore, so there is no point to have the UI updates. You just want to stop them at this stage, on stop, okay? So let's open the application again. Now it's gonna call the onStart method and the onResume method. So again, the onCreate method is not called even if this onStop method is called, because the application is not dead yet. So at this stage, onStop, the application might get killed because the operating system wants to free up some resources. But in this case, it didn't kill our application, so it just called the onStart and the onResume. So now let's just tap on this recent icon here. Now the onPause method and the onStop method is called, because if we go at this stage, you can see that the application is partially visible, but it's gonna call the onStop method anyway, because at any point we might switch to another application, or we might go in the background, okay? So the onStop method will always be called after the onPause method. But it is very important that you save the user's data in the onPause method, so you won't risk losing essential data. So now let's learn about the final lifecycle method. So this is the method that is called when the application is dead, okay? This is going to be the last stage of the Android lifecycle method. So in this stage, you want to completely disconnect the application from any servers. You want to completely shut down any server interaction. So because your application is going to be dead soon, so you don't want anything to actually interfere with the user experience. You just want to completely clean up everything. And that method is called the onDestroy. So here I'm just gonna call this method onDestroy, and let's go ahead and paste this toast message here inside the body of this method. And let's say that the onDestroy method is called. So let's go ahead and run the program, and let's see when this method is going to be called when we interact with the application. So first, onCreate, onStart, onResume. Now the user interacts with the application. So let's go ahead and let's just play a little bit with this quiz here. So now let's go ahead and tap on this finish the quiz. Now it says onPause method is called, onStop method is called, onDestroy method is called. So when the activity is finished, this means that it is being destroyed. So that's why now the application is destroyed from the memory. So what does that mean? This means that if I go ahead and try to run the application again, it has to give birth to this activity again, because the application is dead now. So let's go ahead and just select the app. Now it says onCreate method is called, onStart method is called, and onResume method is called, okay? You can see that it gave birth to the application or this activity. Remember, each activity is going to have its own lifecycle methods. So you're going to see how you can create different activities later in this course. So now let's do something else. Let's go ahead and tap on this back icon here and see what happens. Now it says onPause method is called, onStop method is called, and onDestroy method is called. So again, the application is dead. When we tap on this back icon here, the application is going to be dead. And if I try to run the application again, it has to call the onCreate method again. So now let's interact with the application a little bit here. And now I try to tap on this back icon here. If I do that, and then if I want to go back to the application, you can see that the data is reset. All data is reset, and the user has to start the quiz again. So again, it is very important that we save the data in the onPause method. So now let's see what happens when the application goes into the landscape mode. So first, we need to go and open the Android manifest.xml file. And here we need to delete this attribute screen orientation because I want to allow the application to go into the landscape mode. So now I'm gonna run the program again and see what happens. So now let's tap on this rotate right. Now I'm gonna tap on this item here to get the application in the landscape mode, on pause method, on stop method, and the on destroy method, on create method, on start method, and the on resume method. So did you see what happened here? The Android operating system kills the application and then it gives birth to it again. Okay, so when we get the application from the portrait mode to the landscape mode, first it's gonna call the on pause method, on stop method, and then on destroyed method. So this means that the application is now completely dead, and then it's gonna give birth to it again. So it's gonna call on create method, on start method, and on resume method. So now you might ask why this happens. Why the Android operating system kills the application and then gives birth to it again when the application goes into the landscape mode? That's the question, right? The reason for this is that the Android operating system wants to allow our application to completely reload itself for the new setup, for the new layout, for the new way that we see our application, for the new way that we use our application, because as you can see, the application is now completely in a new state. It is now in a landscape mode. So that's why the Android operating system wants us to completely do everything we want the user see when it's in the landscape mode. For example, here we can completely change the layout of our application when it goes into the landscape mode. And that's an opportunity for us. That's good for us. So we can take advantage of this great feature. But there is something else going on here when the application goes into the landscape mode. So now let's just put this application back into the portrait mode by just tapping on this rotate left here, and I'm gonna tap on this item to get it back into the portrait mode. On pause method is called, on stop method, on destroy method, on create method, on start method, and then the on resume method is called. Okay, now the application is in the running state. But there is an additional thing, an extra method or message is being sent here when the application goes into the landscape mode or it goes back into the portrait mode. And that method is called onSave instance state. So the onSave instance state method is called right after the onPause method is called when the device goes into the landscape mode. So now if I rotate right and try to get the app into the landscape mode, when the onPause method is called, right after it, the onSave instance state method is called, so we can save the state variables. So what do I mean by state variables? For example, the level of the quiz that the user has actually reached, or the level of the game, or any other state variables that the application needs, so that when it is in the landscape mode, it can get back to the same state that it was in the portrait mode. So we're gonna learn about this method in the next video. I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial.